Welcome to Qlick Podcast. It's Josh Kindred, your host today, with Frank Raadt. I'm going to spell that for you, D-E-R-A-A-D-T. Frankie the Raadt. Mate, we've got the little nickname for you, Frankie the Raadt. It's gone around the community for a long time, but I understand just before we came on air, a couple of people were telling me about one of your other nicknames.
Okay, I don't know what that would be. Maybe Batman?
Batman, Snuffleupagus.
Let's not go there.
Where are we going to go today?
On to the next part.
We're going to go on.
Anywhere.
Today's podcast is about Frankie the Raadt. We're going to get to know him as a person, but we're also going to get to know him about his property journey, some of the places he's been. That's the theme of this great podcast, people, property and places. Frankie, you've had a long journey in property, but prior to getting into property, tell us about who you are as a person.
It's an interesting question, Josh, something I don't think about a lot. As a person, 2 arms, 2 legs, heartbeat, the usual. Went to school in Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go back?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So went to school in Sydney, Crows Nest Boys High. Actually, the 50th reunion apparently is just coming up.
Wow.
First time I've heard from anybody in the school in that long. Not amazing.
Is it a prestigious school in Sydney?
No, not at all. It was the school that was below the prestigious school. It was, public school.
Yep.
Public school education. Knocked off school before finishing what they called Year 10, I think it was.
Okay.
In those days.
So you didn't do your HSC?
No HSC and no school certificate.
Okay.
Decided to get into the workforce early. One of my teachers, I believe he's now dead. He was the metalwork teacher, I believe, or woodwork teacher, one of those. Good bloke.
Yeah.
But he told me at one point near the middle of Year 10, I might as well go and get a job because I'm going to fail. And so I thought, no, okay then, I'll do that. And so I went out and got a job. I think my first job was KFC.
Okay.
Dad was a huge fan of KFC. And so he said, is there any jobs going? They said, sure. And it was close to us. We were living in Northbridge, and that was in Artarmon in New South Wales. So I used to ride my motorbike to get there.
Yep.
Extra crispy chicken came out.
Frankie, I had my very first job, well, after the paper run, was at KFC as well. So we actually, surprisingly, although I've known you for a very long time, we share something deep there, having our first job at KFC. But tell me, were you a chicken maker? Were you the guy that dropped it in the oil, or were you on the front counter?
No, dropped it in the oil, mate. I was the cook out the back.
Yeah. And
there were some pretty specific guidelines around that, surprisingly enough. They had a limit. So we got to take a lot of chicken home every night, which my dad loved. But yeah, I heard you say about the paper run. I didn't even think of that because at school I had a paper run. I used to sell papers on the corner near Channel 9.
Yeah.
Up in Willoughby. In New South Wales again. And yeah, I used to make good coin out of that. The tips were amazing.
Okay.
We also did golf ball hunting back in those days, which is now apparently a profession.
Okay.
But as kids,
that's what you do most Thursdays, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I try to, as per the attire for today. It's golf day.
Yep.
So this afternoon, I get in the morning and do a bit of work, talk to the people, and make sure everything's on track. And
go and
in the
hunt for golf balls again.
And spend 4 hours chasing that little white ball around the beautiful grass of Royal Redcliffe.
Hey Frankie, I was telling my daughter the other day, I got a 6-year-old and she's in grade 1, and she was talking about this girl that was riding to school, and I said, well, Dad in grade 2 had a paper run, and I used to go and deliver papers on my bike, and it's such a strange thing for her to understand, and for me to even consider that my daughter in 5-6 months' time could be doing a paper run on her own at 5 a.m. in the morning, getting paid. I don't know what we were getting paid back then, but isn't it interesting to think that it's such a short time, that generation shift, where now I wouldn't even consider sending my daughter out for a paper run in 5 or 6 months, which was just a standard back then, wasn't it?
It was, but I wouldn't suggest that the daughters did it. That was sort of the male domain, as it were, because you're dragging around a fairly heavy trolley full of papers up to the spot. You tried to load up because you wanted to sell out.
Well, I mean, you've got a son. Did your son ever do a paper run?
No, very different upbringing to me. A bit more protective, I guess, because of, as you say, things have changed.
Yeah.
The stuff that we used to do, God, it's amazing we're still here. Of course, we all survived it, but we sort of wrapped our kids in cotton wool a little bit. My young fellow He turned 31 this year. Did his schooling up at Southern Cross at Scarborough, and finishing a medical engineering degree this year. So, yeah, I'm pretty proud of the young bloke. He's certainly done better than me, smarter than me.
Right. It's yet to be seen whether he'll do better.
Well, he thinks so anyway.
Frank, with a name like Raadt, where did you come from? Were you born in Australia?
No, I come from an immigrant family. My parents immigrated in the early 60s when I was less than 1 year old. So I grew up here, but I was effectively born overseas.
Right.
So currently still hold dual nationality.
And where were you born?
Holland. In Den Haag particularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been back?
Yeah, we went back in the late 70s just for a 3-year stint because we had a visa to come back. Of course, we had to have a visa because we were immigrants as such, and we were living here on a permanent residency visa. My dad decided it would be great to come to Australia. He was a freedom hunter, hated Holland. He said it was overregulated, couldn't walk on the grass. It was and it was cold. He said he wanted to move to a warmer climate. My father comes from a Indonesian and Dutch background. He grew up in Indonesia. And my mum, solid Dutchie, still got a solid Dutchy accent right now.
Right. I wonder if 50 years later your dad would still think that it's overregulated compared to Australia.
Look, I don't think it'd matter. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, of course. But mum's still here, and she lives just up the road. And she moved here when I moved here, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that was the time that I started my real estate journey.
So Frank, tell us why did you move from Sydney and what brought you to sunny Queensland?
So we left Sydney in '79 to.
When you say we,
the whole family,
right?
Yeah,
okay,
my whole
everyone.
family. Mum went on a little holiday, and Dad said when she went on the holiday, because it was the first time in something like 16 years that she'd been home to Holland, that when when she came back, he said we're going to be going back to Holland. She's going to be homesick and she's going to want to go back. And sure enough, within weeks of her arriving home from her holiday, the family was packing up to move to Holland.
Wow.
And there was a little bit of not something I really wanted to do, but hey, at 17, it was sort of not really going to stay here on my own. I wasn't that kind of kid.
Yeah.
Anyway, we lived in Holland for 3 years, from 79 through to 81. It was a great experience.
Wow. So from 17 to 20, you lived in Holland?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Yep. And we didn't do a lot of travelling over there. I worked over there. I learnt the language over there. I did a little bit of schooling over there because I was at that age. And what I did find out is in Holland, the education standards were considerably higher than here in terms of what I was used to and experiencing. People pretty much all went to university, and there's this high push to stay in school longer. So, as I said, I worked for Tandy Continental Europe over there as a salesperson and a store manager.
Okay.
In my late teens, early 20s, before we came back. Obviously, I was 20. And when we arrived back, friends of ours that were living in Sydney at the same time had already relocated to Brisbane, on the southern Brisbane end at Mount Warren Park, if I remember correctly. Yep. So when Dad was staying in touch with his old friends from Sydney, he said that they've all moved. It's too expensive to live in Sydney now, and so we were all going to move back to Australia, but this time to Brisbane. So we landed in Brisbane in '81. And Queensland's been home ever since.
Such courage to, I suppose, immigrate in the first place, but then to go back, take the whole family back, and then to come all the way back here. That's just got to be an incredible journey to just pack up your whole family and move around. I mean, these days we're hesitant to move from a house from one suburb to another.
Yeah, I'm exactly that way myself. We did a lot of moving as kids, though. My parents never owned a property. Mum wanted to, but Dad wasn't real keen on the idea, and so we were, I guess, professional tenants. But it was different. Renting was different then. You rented from a landlord mostly.
Okay.
Certainly we did. We always knew our landlords personally. In one instance, before we left to go to Holland, we were living next to our landlords in a house that they owned next door to them.
Okay.
Great people. The Schrobers, their name were. I still remember their name.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely old couple. And it was across the road from the shopping centre. Where Mum worked. Dad had a little store there where he did hi-fi electronics and stuff like that. So going backwards and forwards a bit now.
Yeah. Fascinating to hear a journey of someone like yourself that now you've been in real estate for, 28 years? This is your 28th year?
27 this year. Started in 92.
Okay.
Yeah, 92. Let's do the math. Yep, 27.
27. Yep. So for a guy that's that grew up in a family that moved around the world to now stay in one area and one profession for such a long time, was it something to do with how you were brought up that made you really want to set in stone, or did you just love real estate?
I don't know. Real estate, it was something I wanted to do before I got into it, but I was told to get a decent car and get a haircut. And
who told you that?
A real estate agent down in Woodridge, because when we moved to Brisbane, we lived on the south side. And as I said, my uncles, family friends, which we called uncles, lived in Mount Warren Park, and we ended up in, I think it was on the outskirts of Woodbridge. And I went to a real estate agent there once in my jalopy, which was an old XT Falcon wagon.
Okay.
And he took one look at the car and said, "Oh, mate."
The old shaggin' wagon?
Yeah, it was a Butte truck, actually. Yeah, I really liked it. Great car.
You're going to cut me there?
Yeah, let's move straight past that. Talking back about what you said before about the courage, I never thought about it that way. But you're probably right. I've done a little bit of travelling since, and it's quite frightening if you want to go somewhere on your own. And effectively, that's what my parents did, didn't they?
Yeah.
They, left their family behind. My mum had a big family. Dad didn't have a great big family. He had a sister, and I met them when we were in Holland. I met my extended family for the first time when we went to Holland, and that was at the age of 17. We used to receive these fantastic care packages every Christmas with chocolate and, all the things that you couldn't buy in Australia at the time. Now, of course, everything's available. It's, it's fantastic. Dad used to make his own sweet soy sauce, that ABC soy sauce stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's commonly available in every supermarket, but we used to have to make that out of the salty soy sauce that was available, and Dad had sort of concocted up on the cooktop. And,
very good.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's where you got a bit of you've got a huge appetite for great food, great wine. Yeah. Has that come from your family background, or is that just come from a huge amount of success?
Yeah. No, my dad always loved eating. I love eating, and we love food. And Dad was, I got a real taste for Asian foods from my dad, I think. Okay. The nasi gorengs and the bami goreng and the satay and stuff like that. So I actually did my first ever trip to, we stayed in Bali, which is commonplace for everybody else, but it was a fun trip for me because it's the first time I'd ever been there. Yeah. And my dad being from there, all the foods, fantastic. I'm sure I put on 5 kilos in that week.
Your dad was from where?
Indonesia. So he grew up in Java in Indonesia as a kid.
Wow.
So I thought Dutch and Indonesian parents.
Wow. Okay. So your Dutch background is obviously your mum
and my dad.
And
he
your dad.
He had a Dutch father and an Indonesian mother, and because that was back in the day, of course, when Indonesia was a Dutch colony.
Right.
And so there was a lot of Dutch Indonesians. They're fantastic people. Very friendly.
Such a rich history that, I've known you for a very long time, and we're close mates, but to learn this, is it something that you reflect on?
No, not a lot.
Yeah.
I sort of move on fairly quickly, and I guess that's something to do with my upbringing. And real estate. Real estate's taught me a lot about human nature and, behaviours and, being positive and, moving on, not dwelling on things that, that are sort of holding you back.
Yeah, you're certainly a guy that does look forward, and we'll touch on some of that shortly, but just take us to, I believe that you used to have an ice cream truck.
Yeah, when I first started in real estate, I've done a few different jobs. Like I said, we talked about KFC, obviously the paper route before that. I worked in a radiator repair firm for a little while. Literally in the days where they used to rebuild the radiator cores out of solder. There was one old Italian guy there, and he just literally rebuilt cores. My job was to just grab a new core and put a new tank on the top and solder it all in place and spray paint it. Very unhealthy job, by the way.
Right.
Never get away with that today. Used to come home coughing up the old black paint off the radiators and stuff. And, what else did we do? Then we... I've drawn a blank. But yeah, when we came to Brisbane, I've self-employed at that point in time. Worked at the Winter Garden. You remember the Winter Garden?
Yeah.
Might be before your time.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, guy gave me a job there as a manager of the beverage bar in there, and so it was a hospitality.
Okay.
From there, I saw an ad in the paper for an ice cream franchise thing, and I went and had an interview with Tom McGuinness, who...
How old were you when you got into the ice cream franchise?
20s, late. Let me just think now. Mid-20s, I would say.
Mid-20s.
25-ish.
Yeah, I mean, you think about now a mid-20s, and you lead an extraordinary amount of people, and very well, but you lead a lot of that younger generation, and if you think mid-20s, them running around in an ice cream truck, in the same way that you sort of went out entrepreneurially, and is that a word? I think that's a word. Entrepreneurially went out and got an ice cream truck.
Well, we weren't a rich family by any stretch of the imagination. No, we never owned property or anything like that. And talking about entrepreneurial stuff, back in those days, we used to go to the bottom of the shopping centre car park, and there was a cage there full of empty bottles, and that's where the bottle depot, people used to drop their bottles, and we'd go down there, sift through the bottles, finding the ones that you could trade in for 5 cents up at the corner shop.
Wow.
You know, we talked about hunting golf balls.
Yeah.
Well, in those days, we'd walk through the scrub with a stick in front of us to get rid of the spider webs, looking for golf balls in the bush on the side of the course, which was at Northbridge, and then selling the balls back to the people on the course, and 20 and 30 cents a ball. Yeah, it was a good coin.
It's fair to say that, it wasn't a case of luck, and it wasn't a case of sort of just being shotgunned into a great job in real estate and kick back with your feet up and read the paper.
That's what I thought it was going to be.
Right. Just give me 30 seconds on being an ice cream man. What were you called?
Well, the company that I was franchising with was Mr. Yummy. Funny now, but at the time it seemed all right. And it was a great business, like the guy took me on a run, and I thought, how good's this? It's so easy. You're driving in a truck.
Yeah.
You've got this music playing.
How does it go?
Don't make me do it. Everybody knows Greensleeves, right?
Yeah.
It's burnt into my brain, but I'm not going to go there. And you pull up in a street, turn the music off for a sec, and the kids and families would come from everywhere.
Yeah.
And that was at the time when the blackouts were on. It was the 80s.
Okay.
Joe Bianchi-Peterson was in charge, and he was given
I wasn't born.
Okay. Anyway, so we made great coin. We're selling ice creams at 50 cents a throw, and by the time I got out of that industry, they were $1.20.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was in the space of 6 years. That guy, that gentleman that let me have that franchise for that particular area, because they sold off areas that way. And don't get me wrong, there was competition. There was some. You had to get into the area before the competitors got into the area. Right. You know which areas to go and how fast to drive and where to stop. You got to learn all your stops, the times. We didn't during the week we start work at 3 p.m, but finish at 9:30 at night.
Okay.
And on the weekends they were all day jobs, so it was 7 days a week pretty much.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and if it rained, you sort of find a reason not to go. But even in the rain, you can still sell ice cream. People still want to have an ice cream and when the blackouts were on, it was fabulous. Just get to the top of the highest point in the area, look down, see where the lights are out, and shoot down into there. People had nothing to do except to eat ice cream.
Mate, you went from ice cream into real estate. Why? Why the change?
Actually, I did a little stint as a tow truck driver. I don't know if I mentioned that. The gentleman that owned that ice cream franchise bought a towing company, and I thought, how cool is that? I looked at those trucks, that 8-ton tilt trays, and I said, could I do that for a while? And he said, sure. He said, we're always looking for drivers. He helped me get my license, C-class, which I think is heavy rigid now. Got my tickets in forklifts and crane trucks and stuff like that, because that's the sort of stuff we were carting around. We didn't stop at smashes, although occasionally we come across one and pick them up if we could. Yep. But that wasn't the main part of that business. It was transport. And it was great fun. We picked up cars for the Dean brothers from Bathurst on apple orchards. Wow. And, when the floods were on out at St. George, they were just day and night driving backwards and forwards, bringing the cars back for the insurance companies, and containers, dropping them off at people's houses, taking them from the docks to companies so they can load them up. It was fun. I really enjoyed the driving. Driving's something I still enjoy today. Okay. Yep.
And so, mate, by this stage, you not even 30. Have you got... have you had? Correct. Is Josh born? Are you married? It's like you've had this whole life and you're not even 30.
Yeah. Well, I was married actually. I got married to a girl I met in Holland. when I was there. I was madly in love with her, and I convinced her to be madly in love with me at the time, enough to marry me anyway. And that's
Mr. Yummy.
Yeah, Frank's Frosties in the end. But Mr. Yummy at the time, and actually my wife at the time there, Mika, she drove one of the trucks as well. We actually had two.
Okay.
So we could double up on that. And so that's where Josh comes from, obviously. And that's from my first marriage.
Okay.
Then sort of real estate came about after my first marriage broke down, which was probably because of me, I would suggest. I saw an ad in the paper. We were doing the ice creams. Still, I owned my own truck by then. I'd built a truck of my own. Welded it so I could stand in it because it had a really low roof. So I had to take the roof off and raise the roof with. I learned to weld on that week.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Let me think. I saw an ad in the paper. Or Mum saw an ad in the paper. Actually, now that I think about it, because Josh was at that time 3, and I'd very fortunate to have become the custodial parent, if that's the technical term for it. But basically, I had the privilege of having my son live with me, which was quite uncommon, and I believe it's still relatively uncommon.
Very, very uncommon at that time.
And I was just really lucky. My wife, we're still friends, by the way, and she's moved into this area now too, and she was a great person and is a great person. She did the role where what I would normally have had, where fathers see their kids every second week, and that's what Mika was doing. She was the fun parent. I was the unfun parent, right? So I was the strict parent. Said, you got to get you off to school and eat your dinner, and don't do the wrong thing. So he loved seeing his mum, of course, and I didn't want to interrupt that at all. So we're still really good friends, as I mentioned. Got a little bit off track there, Josh. You have to bring it back. Yeah, but
Frankie, you've got to be. I just think now, thinking about that at that age, and I consider some of the other, late 20-year-olds, if they were to have a kid today, and then, to be as entrepreneurial as you, to have an ice cream truck and Frank's Frosties, take the roof off, learn how to weld, and then completely shift into an industry like real estate with no background in property. You didn't grow up with property. It wasn't something that you ever knew, and you were a single parent.
Yeah,
it's incredibly courageous.
Well, I didn't see it that way. I just wanted a job, and I wanted a good job, and the ice cream business was starting to turn down. I think it was McDonald's started flogging ice creams at 50 cents a cone.
Right. Yep.
And look, it was just wearing on me. It was getting boring, and I just wanted to do something else. And it was actually Mum that tipped me. I was actually dating a girl that lived over here in Redcliffe at the time, a lovely girl. Okay. And when Mum saw the ad in the paper, she said, they're looking for a real estate agent over there in Redcliffe. And that's where the girl, I won't say any names, she lived over here. And so I went to the interview, and I was lucky. It wasn't as heavily regulated as it is today. It was literally, breathe on a mirror. Oh, look, you fogged it up, you're qualified. Here's a desk, here's a phone, this is what you do. And it just felt right.
So what year was that? 92. And you walk in for your interview. When do you start? What's that week look like?
Oh yeah, tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, like literally the next day. And I said, oh, that's great, I'll be here. So I put on my best white shirt and jeans that I had at the time, because driving trucks and ice cream vans, that was shorts, shorts and t-shirts kind of job in those days. That was my uniform. And it was great. I felt fantastic. They gave me a jacket. No, they gave me a jacket because it was that Century 21. They had the gold jacket.
Gold jacket.
It was a bit nerdy, I thought, but I'm a bit nerdy, so that's okay. And the jackets were identifiable, and they went through the history. I went and did a 2-day induction course at the head office, and they told us what was great about Century 21, bit of brainwashing, bit of propaganda. It was good. Yep. Got me into it, and it just felt right. I remember sitting at the desk in the office, which is on Redcliffe Parade. It's just down the road, number 67 it was. Okay. And I sat at that desk, and it just, those deja vu moments you have where the world just is perfect. Everything felt right, and I just felt like I'm in the right place. Okay. I've never looked back from that. It's been a fantastic career. They were the days before we had mobile phones. I remember my first mobile phone. The bills were $1,000 a throw.
Take us into 3 years into your real estate career. It's 1995. There's no realestate.com doesn't exist.
It was actually
did
just...
Did you use a computer at the time?
Yeah, we did. We had those green screen computers and dot matrix printers, and I was using everything was manual. So we used the printers to print out the Valuer General's reports of who owned properties, and we'd go down door knocking and dropping things in people's letterboxes. And
how did people get to know Frankie? How were you the guy that they would sell their house with? What was the experience like for the customer at the time?
Not a lot's really changed. Well, it's starting to change now. This digital revolution that's going on is definitely changing the industry. But not a lot has changed in the industry right up until sort of the late 90s, early 2000s. What we saw at the time was, everything was manual. Like I said before, you spent a lot of time on the phone. We didn't have the do not call registers and all that sort of stuff that we have today. Again, a lot less regulation. And we just were looking for people who wanted to give us a chance to sell their home. Or if they needed to sell their home, we wanted to be on their shopping list.
Okay. So you're effectively a cold caller.
To a large extent, yeah. But people used to walk past. They didn't have computers. So they used to walk.
Okay.
When they wanted to buy a house, they'd go and see a real estate agent.
Yep.
So they'd, rock up to the front of the office and have a look in the window. And, you might think that they'd be buyers, but guess what? Buyers are sellers.
Okay.
So you'd go out and have a chat with them, introduce yourself, see if you could help them find what they're looking for. So there was a great customer service aspect to it, which I think we're coming back to now. That's where I think we're going at the moment. There's always been this discussion of service, but yeah, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. And so you went from Century 21. When did you start your own business?
1999.
Okay.
We started Remax in the area. It was the guy that owned Century 21, who I'm still friends with now. He's actually unwell at the moment, so we stay in touch regularly. Adrian Hollis, his name, is a terrific fella. He gave me my start in real estate.
Yep.
And a franchise came to the area, looking to headhunt me as a salesperson.
Yeah.
And I said, I was friends with Adrian. I told him what was going on, and he said, mate, it sounds like a great thing. Why don't we do it together? And so instead of me leaving him to go and work for them, because what I said was, what they were offering, I'd want to work there. So why don't we own it? Because I reckon other people will want to work with us.
Okay.
And we did that for 2 years. Unfortunately, Adrian then went through some matrimonial issues, and his life was turned upside down, which is when I hooked up with Michael. He was a salesperson at LJ Hooker at the time, and I've been trying to recruit him to come and join us. And I said, how about if you come in as my business partner?
Cool. So
we got along really well.
So you've got the first Remax in the region.
Yep.
And Frankie's just getting served his coffee, mate. What are you having today? Cappuccino?
Little cappuccino.
Little cappuccino. Tell me, I'm going to go sideways here, and I'll probably get in trouble from someone. But why haven't you moved over to the Piccolo? You're a guy that still wears the white shirt. You still wear the suit every single day. In this day and age, the tech revolution, the coffee says so much about you as a person.
Oh, does it?
And and why can't I get you onto the Piccolo?
I don't know. I haven't even given that a second thought, Josh. I'll give it some thought.
Okay.
And maybe you can move me. I'm open.
Right.
If there's one thing I've learned to be over the years, it's open.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I'm learning is such a courageous guy that has such a diverse life, but often you're seen as a pretty straight dude. And it's sort of a bit of a bit of a mystery there.
Yeah, I think that's come from the real estate career, without doubt. We've mentioned regulation a couple of times, but it's also, you asked me something, why do I do it? Right? This is going back, 2 years ago when we moved into this office. You said, why do you do it? And I actually couldn't, I thought it was money. But it's not money. Money's part of it, of course, because you need that to lead a certain lifestyle. But really it was I get a great feeling doing what I'm doing. It makes me feel good. I'm proud of what I do. I've helped a lot of people with something that's pretty important in their lives. Buying and selling property, it's scary when you're buying. I remember the butterflies when I bought my first one up in Frawley Street. Remember it real well. And then, so helping people through those emotions and helping them either buy their first, second or 10th home, it's still a great experience. It never gets old.
Yeah, it is. And I can see that even after all those years, you still do have that burning passion, which is obviously a driving force to to achieve the success that you have. I just want to touch on some of that success. In 2001, 2002, you've got Remax running. I believe were you inducted into the Hall of Fame for Remax?
Yeah, at one point we were, and look, I can't remember all the accolades and awards. And one thing real estate does do is the award ceremonies and stuff like that. They're like the things you see on telly for the movie stars, and you feel like a movie star for an hour or two. And but look,
you get back to work.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, we're not saving lives. We're helping people buy and sell property.
Yeah,
it's important, but it's not the most important thing in the world, is it?
But you did have one of the it would have been one of the biggest Remaxes in the country.
Yeah, we actually were.
The biggest Remax in the country, and so maybe you're potentially one of the biggest in the world.
Oh no, definitely not in the world. It's a big company. There's some big Remaxes. We went to the conventions in the USA. Our first trip to Las Vegas was as a member of the convention there for the Remax, and I was one of the Australian contingent. And it was an eye opener.
But in those days, the franchise model was so strong in real estate. To have the biggest in the country, you must have been doing something. What was happening? What was the environment like in the property industry? And then talk me through the next 5 years to getting out of Remax.
It's interesting, Josh. I've been very lucky throughout my life, and I really have in everything that I've sort of fallen into, or that the opportunity that's shown itself that I've been able to take advantage of. I've just been lucky. Everything's been great right the way through, and Remax was exactly the same. It was an opportunity. Adrian helped me into that as in a business partner, and then with Michael, and we worked right through till 2006. But from 2001 to 2004, we were in a boom cycle. It was the first boom that I'd ever experienced. There'd been booms before, but nothing of the caliber that we experienced at that time. We saw a doubling and then a doubling again effectively of property prices in a 3-year window. So literally property, we thought we were all geniuses. Every property we touched was selling for more money and more money. But
what was it like? It was like houses going for 50,000, then all of a sudden going for 130, then all of a sudden 350. Yeah,
well, they moved from sort of 70 to 100, then to 130, then to 150, and it just kept jumping up until they got into that sort of $300,000 bracket at the time, which my first house was 75 grand. And interestingly enough, I bought that in 2004, and in 2005 there was a little downturn. So I paid 75 grand for it, spent 10 grand on it, and it was worth 65 grand.
So your first house you bought in 2004, first property ever?
Yeah. Okay,
and was it somewhere for you to live?
Actually, it wasn't my first property ever. Here you go. This is the old grey matter kicking back in. No, my first property was when we were on the south side. A friend of mine bought a house. He came back after, a weekend. He said, I bought a house on the weekend. I said, wow, okay. I never even gave that a second thought. And, how did that happen? And I said, we just went out looking, and next thing you know, we bought one. And I thought, that's going to save you, paying rent, and you'll be paying off your own house. And so the following weekend, we went out and bought a house.
Right.
Yeah, in Eden's Landing, which is on the south side. And lived there for 5 years, renovated it because it was a spec home, a little low-set brick, 3-bedder. I've still got pictures of me fixing up the plumbing in the backyard.
Yeah.
So
it was relatively easy at the time.
It was so easy. It was so easy, it was beyond a joke. It was like, bought a house. And, and when we sold that, we made no money on it in 5 years. The market had moved nowhere. So literally I sold it, I think, for less than I bought it for.
Okay.
But with the money I got out of that, I bought another house. It was the Amityville Horror looking house in Slacks Creek on the side of the hill, which turned out later, only many, many years later, turned out to be that area that was contaminated. Wow. Who would have thought? Didn't know that at the time. Anyway, long story short, we within a year, things had changed, and we needed to sell that house. The interest rates had rocketed up to 17.5%. It was a real struggle to pay the mortgage. And the prices went up. I didn't know what that was all about. The lady came in, she said, we think we can get you 80 grand for this house. And I said, really? And she said, sure. And so the next day we're skinny dipping in the pool. She rocks up without letting me know. And I'm sort of up against the edge of the pool saying, hey, hello. She goes, we've got somebody who wants to buy the house. I said, thanks for the notice. And it was sold in a day. So
wow.
They were my two real estate experiences at the time, right? Before actually getting
before actually then going on and buying what you thought was your first house 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, sorry about that. It was my first house in Redcliffe.
Right.
Okay. So
and was the experience hard? I suppose the third time round for you?
Very difficult. Because I was self-employed effectively. Banks were tight with their lending, etc. They wanted to see a couple of years worth of earnings, which is fair enough. They wanted to know that you could make the repayments, but it was also a recovery. I'd gone through a divorce. I was looking after my son. I was in real estate, and I wanted to have my own place. Somewhere where we could set down roots. And the reason for buying the property was because it was right around the corner from the school. So I figured, that's going to be really, literally, Josh could walk to the end of the street and be at school.
Yeah.
And we stayed in that area pretty much after that. Then we moved to Shea Street. Then the guy that I remember doing an appraisal on a house where we live now. And I said, I really like this house. My TV will fit in that slot. And the guy says, that's cool. And I said, look, if you were considering selling it, I might even be a buyer for it. And next thing you know, he's sending me an email and we swapped houses. He bought my house, I bought his house.
Wow.
And we thought we were going to be there for a year because we'd already bought a block on the other side of the canal where we were going to build our dream home.
Right.
And we're still living there now. And we're probably never going to move. We do toy with it because I'm getting a bit older too, thinking about the retirement sort of.
So you now live on the canals in Newport?
Yep, loving it.
And how long have you been there for? 2003
we moved in there.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it was going to be a 12-month thing while we built the house across the canal, which never happened. I didn't like the house that much. I thought, the TV will fit, so it'll be a good.
Did you buy on the canals because you were making so much money and so successful, or did you love fishing?
Yes.
Both.
Yes to all of that. Yeah, I had a great little fishing boat that I bought brand new, and things. We were very successful. The market was booming.
Yeah,
the business was booming. We were putting in some hours, but we also, we were setting ourselves up.
Yeah.
We bought a couple of properties. When I sold that property in Frawley Street, the main reason for selling that was to upgrade, but also to buy a couple of specific investment properties at that time.
Okay.
And I remember my partner at the time saying, "Oh no, we should keep this as an investment property and just buy the other one." And I said, "No, that's not going to work." And we did buy a couple of investment properties and another property to live in, and so that's when my property investment journey really began. And when we had Remax, I was very lucky again, right? I was hooked up with a guy who was property mad. I remember nights coming back into the office. We were up the road at number 23 at the time, running our little Remax business. We had a stack of staff and everything was going great. And nights he walks in, he says, "We're buying 35 Redcliffe Parade." And it was a dilapidated old building where the council was in. It had a leaky roof and all that sort of stuff, as you might remember.
Yep.
And I said, okay, that sounds like something interesting. That way we can have our own premises. And I remember giving it about 30 seconds thought, and next thing you know, we bought this property. We didn't even have the funding approved.
Yeah.
But
you just did it.
Well, Knightsy did it.
Yeah.
Knightsy was
not Knightsy for anybody else. Who's Knightsy? I mean, he's a bloke that you spend a fair bit of time with, and many people local will know Knightsy.
Yeah,
but
he's a good bloke.
Just tell us about Knightsy. Michael Knights.
Yep. Michael Knights. He was a gun real estate agent. I considered myself a gun real estate agent at the time. We were competitors when we joined forces, and it was really funny. We were chasing the same stock, and we were selling selling properties, trying to sort of beat each other at being the best.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to recruit him, and then I ended up being his business partner.
But Knightsy went on to be, at the time, probably. He would have been in the top 10 real estate agents in the country.
He was absolutely the number one in Remax.
Yep.
I remember one month the agency sold 90 properties. Knightsy accounted for over 40 or 50 of those with his team. He had a little team of people that were working with him, and just pushed really hard every day.
Yep. Because often there's a stigma that's come with real estate agents over the last 15 years, but and Michael certainly probably changed the landscape of Queensland real estate in a lot of ways. You can't be an individual and sell 90 properties in a month, and not change the way things are done.
Oh well, it certainly attracted some attention. There was a lot of agents in the area that weren't happy with how we were taking their business away from them and making sure that our clients were getting their business effectively, because it's a competitive thing, right? At the end of the day, when you're putting your property on the market, you're not alone. There's other people that are trying to sell their homes too. So how do you make sure that your client gets an advantage over the competitors in the marketplace?
Right.
And we discovered at that time that the best way to do that was make sure every single buyer inspected their property.
Okay.
And that way we could pit them against each other and obviously get the best price. And of course the market was in a state of flux. It was moving at the time too. So, it was a bit difficult because, like I said, we had some challenges there. Like the Office of Fair Trading, the regulators started coming out.
Well, you guys at the time really led the way on a whole new way to demonstrate prices. And the Queensland government did basically come in and say, the Office of Fair Trading came in and pretty much said no deal.
Yeah, they said, no, you can't do that. And we said, well, why not? We're not, oh no, you're tricking people into buying properties. I said, well, we're not. But, I learned years ago you don't argue with the people that have got deeper pockets than you, and they're using our money to fight us. And like I said to Knightsy, I said, it's an unwinnable fight. So
did you fight the government over that?
Not a chance. No,
okay.
Knightsy wanted to, and maybe with the benefit of hindsight we should have given it a try, but I thought there was easier ways to go broke and less public ways to go broke, so I said, let's not go broke.
Because it was still very much a public thing for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Is it something that scarred you personally, and is it something that you've, tucked away in a box and thrown away, or is it something that you learn from?
It's something you learn from. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, there's rules and regs. There's a reason they're there. Rules is rules. You've got to follow them. And, it was difficult, but, we had to change. And it was as simple as that. Because
to straighten it out for anybody listening, it wasn't that you were doing the wrong thing.
Oh, not at all.
You weren't breaking the rules or the regulations.
Not at all.
It was that you just developed a way to create such a competitive advantage that the government came in and changed the rules. Is that right?
Yeah, basically. They changed and that's exactly how it came about. We did a course that Remax had put on. They brought this guy called David Pilling up to Queensland. He was down south and he'd worked in companies in WA. And he discovered that if you put a property on the market with a bottom price and a top price, that as long as the bottom price and the top price are in a zone of the valuation of the property, that you'll attract all the buyers in that price category, because buyers don't buy at a price, buyers buy in a price range.
Right.
And we walked out of that seminar like, wow, this is why haven't we been doing this forever? It was so obvious to us that this was the way to go, and all we did was tweak it a little bit. We took the top price off.
Okay. so starting from.
Yeah, so it was, what do we used to say? Buyers over should inspect,
right.
I think was the actual term.
Okay. And so your homes were just flooded with buyers?
Of course, because we were pitching them in those days at around about 15 to 20% below what we thought they were worth in a rising market.
Right.
Okay. So unfortunately, or fortunately for us, the buying public don't read what you say. They look at the number. And so the number would be, they go, oh, something's not right here. We better look at this. All right. And when they get there, they go, oh, we love it. And because everything that they'd been seeing was effectively not matching the picture of their budget.
Right.
Right. Because you know how it goes.
Yeah.
The buyer's picture is of that mansion and the budget is of the shack.
Yeah, I've never heard of anybody going in with a $500,000 budget and not spending $520,000.
Yeah, we all do it, right?
Yeah.
Go down to Harvey Norman, they advertise for the microwave at $99 and you walk out with a $300 microwave, because once you're looking at them, you're going, well, I don't really want that $99 one. And the same thing happens, right? We used to consult with people in the early days of real estate. We'd sit down with a buyer and we'd sit down with the sellers. What do you need to achieve? And with the buyers, what is it you're exactly looking for? And we'd show them a couple, get a feel for it. And then I'd know that oftentimes we'd take them to a house that was that sort of 10%, 15% above their price range. They go, this is perfect.
Yep.
And I go, yeah, I figured that would be the case. And sure enough, they would then find the extra money and buy the home, because that's what they really wanted at the end of the day.
And as a real estate agent, the job's always been to work for the seller.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, the legal obligation for a real estate agent is to work for the seller. I think there's no mystery around that. No. But the nature of what you were doing meant that you'd have 20 buyers and obviously only one person can buy a house. You've got 19 people upset.
A lot of people upset.
And that's obviously then what drove the government to make changes, is the 19 people upset.
That was it. Yeah, that was it. Exactly right. There was a number of complaints. And I said to the guy from the OFT, I said, at some point this boom will end.
Yeah.
All right. And then the sellers are going to be the ones complaining. They're going to be the ones ringing you guys saying, the agents, they're telling us the prices are too high, and we've all heard about the overpricing that's been going on, agents, pitching it too high to get the business and that sort of thing. And ultimately that's because of people's psychology. It's the way people think.
Yeah.
If you go in there and tell them, that movie, you can't handle the truth.
the nature of...
They will say, tell me the truth, but you know what? They don't really want the truth.
The nature of property has changed so much with tech.
The tech's
in those days, really there was no way of knowing what a property had sold for before. There was no internet where you could just Google a property and all of a sudden it tells you.
We used to keep that information. Yeah, look, the agents had that information, of course, through the Value Generals reports. Plus, we were selling the properties. We had this multi-listing network where the agents would share what they had for sale with each other.
Yeah.
The internet sort of wiped that out because, of course, what the other agents had became available in one place, namely the internet.
Sure.
But prior to that, it was a catalogue that was updated weekly and that was distributed among the agents. So we knew what things were on the market for and we knew what things were selling for. So we could give accurate price appraisals. And we used to have those discussions and we still do today. It's just a little bit different because it's all available to the consumer online right now. So they don't really need us in that space anymore.
You were the keeper of information.
Correct.
And and your service was the delivery of information and then the natural, obviously, relationship that you'd have at that point.
Yep.
Now, what does a real estate agent's job look like when, in a lot of ways, the consumer has the exact same information? Mm-hmm. And what does the real estate agent's job look like in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, when the consumer has exactly what we have as a real estate agent?
It's interesting, isn't it? It's something I've never been great at predicting the future. What I sort of work is in the now. And I think there's still a space for real estate agents because at the end of the day, we are still consultants with people and we can help, analyse that information with our customers and clients,
right,
showing them where the reality points are in both, selling and buying. And I think people still want to be helped. People still want to, I think you said it once, they want to buy off a friend. And I've made a lot of great friends in this business over the years, both inside of the industry and outside the industry. And we talked about our why and stuff. It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
It's great to walk down the street and have people say, "Hey, Frank, how are you going?" My big problem is I can never remember all the names, but it feels good. You're doing something good for people. You're leaving people with a good experience. I never forget the time. This is back in the 90s, and Adrian was coaching me on how to help this sale get across the line, and I felt really bad for the sellers. It was a little side street off King Street. Can't think of the name now. It eludes me. And I didn't really know the seller's circumstances at the time, but the offer I felt was a bit low. But anyway, we presented the offer and we talked about it and they talked to each other about it and they said, "Look, we're going to take it." And I said, "Okay, I'm really sorry we couldn't do any better than this, and this is early in my career." And Adrian said, "You're doing the right thing." I said, "I'm not sure. Should we just wait? What advice should I give them?" He said, "They need to make the decision as to what's best for them."
Right.
And I walked out the door and I heard this Yahoo coming from the house. But when I left the house, I thought they were upset.
Right.
I didn't.
Because you thought that you could maybe get more.
I thought I could get more. I thought maybe they could get more. But at the end of the day, apparently, because I spoke to them the next day, I said, "Oh, what was that?" She said, we're really happy. She said, "We're thrilled. We're able to move on, get on to the next chapter of our lives."
Next stage.
Yeah.
Speaking of the next stage, after 27 years in real estate, what does the next stage look like for you? You've got a home in Newport that you say you're never going to leave. You've got an absolute love for
great friends.
You've got a love for the people that you serve, but no longer you're not really swinging the gavel. And
you told me to bring this.
We'll talk about your gavel, your finely tuned gavel, shortly. But what does the next stage look like for Frankie?
I still want to be helping people. I think I want to give a little bit more back in terms of sharing what I've learned over the years. Because, as I said, a lot of it's still the same, right? Heard it the other day. The lyrics have already been written. It was this is quoted from Dane Athen. I'll give him the credit for saying it because it was great. I loved it. He said, "The lyrics have already been written. It just depends on how well you sing the song." And
Right.
well, you know the words, you know. So there's nothing really new there at the moment in terms of what we do. It's a process.
Yep.
So what I want to do is share that process and help our people grow and help their people achieve what they want to achieve, which is their customers and clients. Really my role now is helping our people be the best agents they can be.
Yep. To deliver
The service that something that we want to be the best, right? We want to set the new level, the new benchmark. We want our competitors to effectively either give up or follow our model.
Right.
Because that's what we did back in the early 2000s. Our competitors couldn't follow our model because they just didn't do it as well as we did it.
Yeah.
So then the government stepped in, and I think that was largely due to the complaints at the time, not just from the consumers that were missing out, but from the other agents that were sort of pushing to, have us reined in.
The competitive advantage that you had.
We demonstrated.
Now, speaking of places you've lived in Holland, I know you're a bit of a lover of your caravan now. And what's the favourite place that you want to go? Favourite place that you've been?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't really have my favourite place is here, home, right? I'm a bit of a homebody. So I think the short answer is my favourite place is home. I love being at home.
Okay.
You know, it's funny, you know, we went out last night, as you know, and before we went out, Simone and I looked at each other and said, it'd be great to just stay home, you know, because we're at work all day long, and, you know, we work, you know, we might not be breaking rocks, but we work long hours.
Yeah.
But when we got out, we had a great time. You know, and so when we came home last night, she said, I'm glad we went out.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it?
But by the same token, we love being at home.
Sure.
And so everything we have is there. I say it all the time. Why would we go there? We've got it all here.
Right. And so you obviously love being in this place. What was it like living around the world, and then what made you choose here as your home? Obviously there was the natural, you had a skirt that you were chasing at the time. You know, it drew you here, but you know, you came from a background of moving around a fair bit. Yeah. You stayed here.
Yeah,
Why?
I wanted to give stability. I wanted my son Josh to have stability. I wanted him to have long-term friends in school. Mm-hmm. You know, I was making new friends every time we moved.
Yep.
Which was fine. You know, I didn't see that as an issue, but certainly that wasn't what I wanted for my son. And as I think all parents do this, right? They just want the best for their kids. I'm sure you're the same. You know, you talked about Indy before, and you know the newspaper run. I'd be worried about that. But by the same token, it might teach you some great work ethic too, because that's something that I've sort of got from my upbringing was you got to work.
Yeah.
And the harder you work, the luckier you get, as they say.
And that's why you've been so lucky. The next place you're going to, you do a little bit of travel, you get out on the cruises.
Well, you said caravan, but I don't have one of those. I've been looking at motorhomes.
Okay.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I did just take the trip to the dark side and look at a caravan the other day, and I thought, stick to the motorhome. I like the all-in-one aspect.
So you are going to be a grey nomad?
Definitely. I've already got the grey. Just need the nomad bit. That'll probably start in about sort of, 8 years. That's the plan at this stage.
Beautiful. So where's the next place that you're going?
Next place is going to be Europe for Simone's 50th. We're going to go and I've been started planning the trip. Yep. Simone doesn't know all the details yet. It's going to be some surprises in there for her.
Nice.
It's for her birthday. It's not about me.
Okay.
But I am going to do a lot of eating and wine. Yeah, for sure. We're definitely going to be doing France, and I want to take her to see Holland. She's never been there, and you know it's been over 30 years since I've been there.
Yeah,
so,
great.
I'd love to go back there. Our closest friends have just been there on a big trip. They're a bit older than me, so they're in that sort of semi-retirement phase already where I'm not. And I was listening to the stories and thinking, it's going to be so good.
Great. You love your wine.
Yep.
Tell us how many bottles of wine have you got?
430 something at the moment.
Okay.
And I think I've consumed double that amount. And the only reason I know these numbers is because I use an app to control what I've got and to see what I've got and to see when it's got to be consumed by and stuff like that.
Okay, what's the best wine you've got in your fridge?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I actually don't know. What the best? They're all good.
Give us a couple.
Well, that's a difficult one because it depends on the mood I'm in.
Right.
You know, I've got I like Molly Duca wines from the McLaren Vale.
Okay.
I love Wendouree from Clare Valley. So it just depends.
What's your special occasion wine?
Oh, mate, they're all good.
Yeah.
I think you know that. There's not a wine in my cellar that I wouldn't enjoy. You know, I've tried them all, and they're all good.
Beautiful.
And some of them are getting a bit of age on them now, which I hope will improve those ones that I'm holding on to. But the app helps me with that too.
So you mean you're using technology to work through your wine? You are a bit of a tech fan.
I'm a bit OCD as well. Like,
Right.
I like things to be straight, and I like things to be in order, and all the cups that are the same size to be together. And it's not an issue, but it's certainly I'm big on spreadsheets. I'm big on keeping the details right.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about before. I want to be on the right side of the line all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a stickler
like
for the
tech, it
rules
helps.
and a stickler for it being right.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to be right. You say it, what's in the best interest of the client and the customer, right? We want them to walk away with a great experience. We want them to love us.
Yeah.
We don't want them going, oh, that was terrible. I hate that guy. And look, I'd love to say that everybody I've touched loves me. But the reality is there'd be a few people along the way that no matter how hard I try, I wasn't able to please.
Yeah. You've got a couple of X's that you probably fall into that.
Actually, there's only one.
That you've
There's only
touched.
one. There's only one.
Mate, let's finish up with I suppose where does Frankie retire? Does he retire in his Newport home? Does he downsize?
Yeah, probably downsize. The house is massive. Although there is an option to downsize in that house because of the design of it. We could potentially stay there and rent out the other side or something. But obviously, retirement, you need income, that passive income. And we've got our goal would be to we'll see how things roll over the next 6 to 8 years. We've still got a bit of work ahead of us yet. Still building the bank balance so that I can retire in the same manner that I'm living in, but not working, sort of thing, or not working every day anyway.
It'd be remiss of me not to ask you this because of your exposure to property, personally investing, the success you have, and really being able to paint what it looks like for you in the future with passive income, the home you live in now. What would be your best piece of advice for somebody that wants to set themselves up and be really successful in property investment? What's the best piece of advice?
Buy property that gives you a great return.
Mm-hmm.
Buy a property that's going to, because capital gains, we look at that and a lot of people bank on it, and you will get it over a period of time, but who knows what the future holds? We talked about before, I can't tell the future. I'm not a forecaster as such. We can only kind of guess what's going to happen and work towards that. But property's safe, right? You've got to live somewhere, so have a good home, roof over your head.
Yep.
The one I've got, as I mentioned before, it's fairly large. So talking about downsizing, there'll be equity in there that I'll be able to take out at some point in the future.
Right.
And if we downsize, you buy a smaller house, and then there's a few things you can do there. Invest in the share market. I would certainly, if I could do things over, I'd probably do that sooner.
Okay.
Was a gentleman that advised me to get into it, and I didn't take his advice. I'd be a lot richer today had I have done so, potentially, although there's people that have been on that journey with that same gentleman who I know are still working. So it's the luck of the draw with that.
So it's a little bit of both.
I think time, Josh, a lot of the clients I've spoken to, especially the ones that are in their 70s, a lot of it's to do with time, the multiplication effect, the increase in value that you get over time. So the properties we own, or bar one or two, I've owned them from my investment properties that I told you about. I've owned one of those for over 20 years.
Right.
And as I said to my son, never sell that.
Just sits there. Beautiful.
And maintain it, keep it. The values changed in the land now. The zonings have changed over time. So, there's property. Buy land, buy something that will give you an income with a decent parcel of land under it. Invest in shares. Invest. Spend less than you earn would probably be the best advice.
You've got nearly 30 years of real estate experience. You've got a young group of people that are in their mid-20s in real estate. They want to spend the next 30 years. They want to get to mid-50s like you and have had a great career in real estate. They're going to see a lot of change like you have.
Sure.
That there used to be window brochures. You used to have all the information. It's now a tech-driven industry in a lot of ways, and the consumer has so much more power. The next 30 years are going to see that speed up dramatically. What's the advice that you give to a mid-20s person that can really get their head around, how do I have a 30-year career?
Don't give up. Find your passion. If you love your job, it's not a job. It's a way of life. I've said that to people before. Real estate became a way of life for me.
Right.
Everywhere you go, you talk about it with people, and I don't usually instigate the conversations. As soon as they find out you're in real estate, it's a national passion, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Work hard. Don't be scared to put in the hours. I've always worked hard and long hours. Sometimes I've been luckier than others. Like I talked about the ice cream business that we had.
Yeah.
I didn't start till 3 PM, but I worked 7 days a week.
It's not a job that you can do and just do it casually, is it?
No.
It is a job that you have to work hard, and you have to work hard every day.
I think we have to remember who our customer and clients are. Even though they're not paying us up front on an hourly basis, they are expecting you to, this is their most valuable asset besides their car, and they're expecting you to do a good job for them and work hard for them and give them great advice. Don't let down your client. They're your next, they'll sell through you again. I've had a lot of repeat business over the years, and it's because I actually care. I don't want them to have a bad experience. And I said before, there's always one or two that you just can't please, but it's not for lack of trying.
You're a caring, loving guy. You've got such a wealth of experience, and you're also a very, very funny man, which a lot of people don't get to enjoy. I had the gentleman who is Australasia's #1 auctioneer come in, and
Justin.
Justin Nickerson, and he was on our podcast, and I'd say that he was probably bragging about the quality of his gavel. And you've brought your gavel in today.
Yep, here it is.
And
here it is, Justin.
It's Tell us about your gavel. Where did it come from?
Actually, this was a gift from my friend and colleague and partner, Adrian.
Okay.
Adrian was an auctioneer. And when he sort of went through that turmoil and got out of real estate, and he sort of dabbled a little bit for a while, when I became an auctioneer, he said, "Oh, you're going to need a gavel," and he gifted me this beautiful piece of timber in the shape of a gavel hammer.
It is it is bigger than Justin's, and it's a tan form of gavel. Does it hold sentiment for you? You just talked about it. You've had it for a while, but is it something that's sentimental?
A little bit. I expect I'll have it for the rest of my days, and I don't know what will happen to it afterwards, and it probably won't matter. Okay, right. But I will certainly always keep that gavel, and it's sentimental from the perspective of I've called some auctions with it, and I love dropping it because that's where everybody's happy, right? The buyer's happy, the seller's happy when that happens. So it's one of those moments. But yeah, it's helped a lot of people, and it's another part of me.
This is a Qlick Podcast. Josh Kindred, your host, with Frankie to Raadt. We're going to hand it over to Frankie to do a selling sold. Is that what you do? Okay, you're going to wrap it up for us with a
third and final call. Are we all done? All silent. Last chance to join in, and I'm happy to say it is sold.
Thanks, Frankie.
Thanks, Josh.